Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have all bad martinis for conservatives today. Bad across the board. But don't take it out on our sponsor. They have a very good service, and that's Casper Mattresses. Right now, you can get $50 off towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/lunch and using the promo code lunch at checkout. More on them in just a moment. Jim, let's start with our first bad martini. Most of the attention on post-midterm recounts has been in the state of Florida, and specifically in Broward County, and rightfully so. That's pretty much been an ethical and legal train wreck down there, and hopefully we'll still have the right winners when all is said and done there. But as a result, a lot of attention was taken off the very tight Senate race in Arizona. We thought the day after, and a lot of the ballots weren't counted yet, but the trends were looking good, that Martha McSally had actually won that race and held the seat for Republicans, as Jeff Flake, of course, is retiring. That's not the case. Maricopa County did not go the way that the Republicans were expecting or hoped or had seen go in the governor's race at all. In the end, Kyrsten Sinema is ahead, and last night Martha McSally determined that she could not catch up and issued this concession via social media.
Hey everybody, I just called Kyrsten Sinema and congratulated her on becoming Arizona's first female senator after a hard-fought battle. I wish her all success as she represents Arizona in the Senate. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who supported me in this campaign, my staff and volunteers and everybody who voted for me. I'm so grateful for you as my wingman and my wingwomen in this journey. We sure wish it came out with a different result, but I'm so thankful for you. As I traveled around this state, I was so inspired by the many people that I met. And I am convinced Arizona is the best state in the country, and our best days are still yet to come, and I'm going to continue to pray for our success. Thank you so much.
In case you have not seen the video, nobody's planing a piece of wood in the background. She's sitting there with her dog who's panting. So, Jim, this is a disappointment. We had seen polls certainly that had Kyrsten Sinema ahead, so this doesn't come as a huge shock. The early voting, as you had pointed out, looked pretty good for McSally. Her concession is pretty gracious here, and a lot of people think it's because she's teeing up to really finish the rest of John McCain's term here. What's your sense on what happened and where we go from here?
Greg, is it just me, or with the little line about we're the greatest state in the nation, not the meth lab of democracy, as your new senator suggested or claimed? Voters, way to go, people. No, I guess I should give credit to McSally for taking the high road in this positive attitude. Yeah, she could end up becoming appointed Senator McSally very soon. Still deeply disappointing considering the quality of the candidates, the fact that Sinema managed to, somehow avoid any real consequence of these egregious comments that you'd ordinarily expect to be, career-defining and sinking. And I also think that we can't overlook the fact that Doug Ducey won quite comfortably in this state. So when you want to say, the state's turning blue, the Californians are moving in, and it's all becoming liberal, didn't happen in the governor's race, which, I think one theory that would seem to make sense is that the Senate race became a referendum on Trump in a way that the governor's race did not. People do not really think of electing their governor as making a statement on the president of the United States, but the senator is going to say either I'm going to enact the president's agenda or I'm going to vote against the president's agenda. Trump won Arizona in 2016, but it was not a terribly wide margin, and this is a state that is kind of getting from red to magenta, and maybe people are going to argue that it's purple now. This is not, I think, the attitude of the Trump administration towards John McCain and Jeff Flake. I understand, the frustration of senators who don't vote your way, but man, maybe that stirred up some bad blood there. Maybe there's some lingering bad blood from the primary with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. I mean, this was a time for Republicans to unite, and these number of people who ended up voting for Doug Ducey did not vote for Martha McSally, and that stings, that hurts, that is annoying. And if it really is the fact that the Trump-era Republican Party is not going to be as competitive in certain places as the previous Republican Party, boy, that doesn't look good for Arizona, both for the, presidential race in 2020. The seat comes up in 2020 again for the appointed seat, and 2022. If you like voting for Senate in Arizona, you're going to get to do it over and over again, Greg. It just keeps on. They're just going to keep having them every 2 years or so. And if you're the Republicans, you kind of need to figure out how to get more competitive. I would argue you can stand for a secure border without going full Sheriff Joe on people. But apparently some Republicans out there think different, and now they've managed to lose the Senate race for the first time since the 1980s. Way to go, Arizona. Way to go.
Yeah, this is a winnable race. We were hoping for 54. Assuming Florida stays the way it is, it's at least 52. If we win the Mississippi runoff, it's 53. Cindy Hyde-Smith not doing herself a lot of favors in the last couple days, so that could get more interesting than it should be. Jim, as you said in the Morning Jolt today, a week after the midterm elections, this doesn't look quite as good as we thought it did the day after.
No, and it's deeply frustrating. And I think that sometimes it takes a while for these things to come together. The House loss is now looking like it's going to be closer to 40 than to 30. As much as you say, really, that does make a difference. There are a couple of those seats, like I mentioned, the ones in coastal South Carolina. Whether Mia Love may hang on. That's the other kind of nice, pleasant little surprise coming out of this. But by a couple of seats, you're like, okay, Oklahoma City, we'll do okay. We'll win them back. The Democrats are renting those seats. They don't own them, so to speak. But a couple of these other ones, these suburban districts are looking rough, and you're going to need different candidates and a different party image to win back in that area. And I just don't think the Republican Party's image is going to change all that much while Donald Trump is president, whether that's the next 2 years or whether that's the next 6 years. The more really bothersome thing about this is I'm not sure Republicans really grasp this. I think their attitude is, the Senate turned out okay, and we'll just try to sail onward and hope for the best. And Greg, I don't know about you. I don't like to have a strategy of trying to hope for the best.
Yeah, you like to prepare for it. And it's going to be interesting to see with this House. First of all, you mentioned the difference between 30 and 40 Democratic pickups is huge because it'll be able to give a lot of moderate Democrats, if there is such a thing, it's going to give more of them cover to vote no against whatever Nancy Pelosi or whoever the speaker ends up being and be able to have a stronger argument to keep that seat in a swing district. But I get the feeling that a lot of these people just ran against Trump and they're not that moderate. And so it'll be interesting to see exactly how they vote and whether they can have a strong argument for re-election in 2020 and beyond. But 2020 is a long way away, and I'm unfortunately expecting now that the recounts are going to overlap with the launching of exploratory committees for 2020, so we get zero rest in between. But don't let that be a problem for you. Get your rest that you need every night. Casper is a sleep brand that makes expertly designed products to help you get your best rest one night at a time. The experts at Casper work tirelessly to make a quality sleep surface that cradles your natural geometry in all the right places. And after all, you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping. You do, right? Well, maybe not in Washington, but most people spend 1/3 of their life sleeping, so you should be comfortable.
The original Casper mattress combines multiple supportive memory foams for a quality sleep surface with the right amount of both sink and bounce. Its breathable design helps you sleep cool and regulates your body temperature throughout the night. Casper now offers two other mattresses, the Wave and the Essential. The Wave features a patent-pending premium support system to mirror the natural shape of your body, while the Essential has a streamlined design at a price that won't keep you up at night. All Casper products are designed, developed, and assembled in the United States, and prices are affordable because Casper cuts out the middleman and sells directly to you.
Every Casper mattress is delivered right to your door in a small, how-do-they-do-that sized box. Plus, there's free shipping and hassle-free returns in the U.S. and Canada. Plus, you can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free Sleep On It trial. Right now, 3 Martini Lunch listeners can get $50 off towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/lunch and using the promo code LUNCH at checkout. That's casper.com/lunch and use promo code LUNCH for $50 off select mattresses. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Jim, let's move to our second bad martini today. And we've seen evidence of this building, and now there's more evidence that the much ballyhooed Singapore summit back in June between Kim Jong-un and President Trump was all just a big show, just trying to make the United States think that North Korea had changed its mind about weapons of mass destruction. It was turning over a new leaf and trying to be a new respectable member of the international community. It seemed a little bit too good to be true, and more we see that it is. CSIS, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, out with a new report that suggests that North Korea is not only continuing its old tricks, it's actually enhancing them. Here's Brian Todd of CNN with the story.
New information tonight that Kim Jong-un is secretly operating a very dangerous web of hidden missile bases, even while he's been corresponding with President Trump, leading the president to declare the U.S. safe from North Korea's missiles.
The missiles have stopped. The rockets have stopped.
North Korea has stopped testing missiles since Trump and Kim began their dialogue. But tonight, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, has a new report saying Kim's regime is moving ahead with its missile program, operating more than a dozen secret missile sites that the regime has never acknowledged. The new information, even more ominous for what it reveals about North Korea's threat to millions of civilians in Seoul and the 28,500 U.S. troops stationed in South Korea. According to CSIS, the hidden Sakan-Mol base is only about 50 miles north of the DMZ and just a little over 80 miles from Seoul and the areas where American troops are stationed.
All right, Jim, the first thing we need to point out is that CSIS is not some radical left-wing think tank that's just out to nail President Trump. These are kind of the most bookish national security experts that you're ever going to run into. This is what they honestly believe is happening, and they've got the satellite imagery that seems to back it up. So from what we've seen already, the North Koreans are not willing to put together an actual inspections regime with a lot of details about what they can and can't do. Mike Pompeo has been very frustrated by that. President Trump, as recently as last week, everything's rosy, everybody. Everything's great. No more missiles, no more rockets. And, Jim, as this evidence piles up, the question is whether Trump will be able to honestly reassess what he thought Kim Jong-un had agreed to.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, on paper, this should be sort of liberating for the administration, that you can get tougher now. You can really, if you want to bring the hammer down, if you want to run war games right up along the border. You can do basically whatever you want because you really bent over backwards and gave it every possible chance, gave North Korea every opportunity to pursue peace. You gave him the photo ops he wanted. You gave him the grand show he saw. No one could seriously say that, this was Trump being a crazy warmonger. And, Trump was willing to give, North Korea a great deal of concessions, and all he wanted in response was signs of progress, and North Korea would not give that to him. It is the same double game they've been playing in one form or another since the mid-1990s. And this is the sort of argument that should move people on the world stage and say, look, no other president was willing to meet with Kim. No other president was willing to yes, we're glad they stopped launching missiles, but we know they can start that up all over again. And they have not taken any permanent steps towards denuclearization, and that has always been our stated goal. And every now and then they make these vague statements that sound kind of like they're agreeing to denuclearization, but we never see any action backing it up. The question is, and we've seen Trump get angry before. This is a really good opportunity for Trump's temper to come out. Mr. President, it's okay. This is the market. Jim Geraghty is saying it's okay to go on a tirade on Twitter. It's all right. Go right ahead. Let him have it. Let it go. Because I think it's safe to say this administration really extended that full hand, and they got it bitten by the wild dog of Pyongyang. So, again, this is potentially an opportunity here, but my fear is that there'll be kind of a sunken cost theory, and that because the administration believed that they had an opportunity for peace, Trump will not want to believe that he has been ripped off, that Kim Jong-un has taken him for a sucker. He'll continue to believe that things are working and that there's progress until he gets too much glaring evidence that this course of action has not generated the results he wanted.
That's only the second bad martini, folks. All right, let's move on to our third bad martini, and this one hits quite a bit closer to home, especially for Jim over at National Review. Kat Timpf, who writes frequently, of course, she's a contributor to National Review Online. You also see her on Fox News, especially with the Greg Gutfeld show. She tweeted out on Sunday, "I was just ran out of an establishment because of where I worked, chewed out, abused, but I guess that's the norm now." And your colleague Jack Crow has more of the story at National Review Online. After arriving at the bar, Timpf became separated from her friends and found herself in conversation with a man she didn't know, who inquired about her occupation. Timpf explained that she worked at Fox News, and the conversation proceeded unremarkably. A while later, Timpf was confronted by a woman who, after hearing she worked at Fox News, became enraged and began shouting at her in a threatening manner. Quote, "This girl started going nuts on me, screaming at me to get out of the bar. I found her very threatening," Timpf said of the woman, whom she had never met before. She said she tried to move to another section of the large bar, but the young woman followed her while continuing to scream. The woman, who was visibly intoxicated at the time, was surrounded by a large group of men and women who all stood by and laughed as she harassed Timpf and followed her around the bar. After realizing no one in the group would defend her in what might become a violent situation, Timpf was forced to flee the bar. Quote, "It was super uncomfortable, and I didn't want things to get physical." She says, "This is the third time this has happened to me, so I'm just over it," adding that she has no plans to limit her public exposure despite the hostility. So this is a colleague of yours, that for anything to happen like this to one of them, particularly a young woman, is very disturbing. And once again, it shows us that this madness that is not just contained within the realm of politics anymore is just spilling out into everyday life and could potentially create a very dangerous situation. We saw it last week with Antifa trying to knock down the door at Tucker Carlson's house and so forth. It's getting out of hand, and here it is happening again.
Yeah, I'm reminded, Greg, of if I say the term journalist, I don't mean the profession journalism. I mean, there was a mailing list for a whole bunch of folks, some who were mainstream media reporters, some who were more openly liberal or leftward reporters, and then some, out and out Democratic Party activist types. And it was a big mailing list. And I think it was the Daily Caller or somebody had managed to get access, downloaded the whole thing, and started putting out all kinds of what people thought were, private or semi-private conversations out there. And I remember one of the threads, Greg, was before election night 2008, and people talked about whose face they wanted to see when the Democrats won in 2008, and whose grins they wanted to see wiped off their face and all that stuff. And people went down the list. There were the usual: Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, people said, mostly Fox News personalities. And Greg, somebody said Michael Barone. And I just remember, right? You're like, I just remember that Michael Barone is the one who really drives you crazy. He's right of center, sure, but I don't think he's not like an outspoken table pounding. He's an election analysis guy. How does Michael Barone make you angry? See a psychologist when you're that enraged about the wonky guy in glasses talking about turnout rates in Middlesex County, New Jersey, going back in 1876. I kind of feel that way about getting mad at Kat Timpf, right? I mean, like, Kat writes about, hey, look at this crazy thing going on this college campus. Can you believe this? Right? That's kind of the gist of everything she does. And I'm sure, I guess, if you're a campus lefty, you're like, how dare she make fun of us? But by and large, it's not like she's, spittle-flecking fury, calling for the beheadings and like, it's Kat saying, oh my God, get a load of this. Like that's the tone of everything she does. And she does her appearances on Fox News. She's very funny. She's delightful. I can't quite get how you'd get that mad at somebody like Kat Timpf, which makes me think, Greg, that this isn't actually about Kat Timpf at all. That this is about her simply being affiliated with Fox News and people who have come to the conclusion that Fox News is worse than Satanists because they respect Satanists for freedom of religion. Or as Wiccans or earth worship or something like that, but that they really have decided that Fox News is the embodiment of all evil in the universe, and that anybody associated with it must be punished, right? These people believe that they basically are, and I use the term punished because they are vigilantes like the Punisher, and this is not just foreshadowing what I'm going to say about Stan Lee. These are people who basically believe that the people who have disagreeing with them, Kat Timpf, by doing her writings about college campuses and her appearances on Fox News, has somehow not just done something this person disagrees with. They've committed some sort of crime, a crime against the people, Greg, and that these people become self-appointed vigilantes. That, yeah, it's not technically against the law to hold those opinions and to be Kat Timpf, but by golly, in the mind of this person, there ought to be. They're going to show her what, the consequences of that. I also think, Greg, there's a strong possibility this could very well just be a person who's a hostile drunk in general. And the argument of our heightened partisan frenzy of our current atmosphere allows this hostile drunk who might otherwise just be nasty to someone over anything to believe, no, I'm being really obnoxious and nasty and threatening to someone, but I'm doing it for a good cause. I'm making the world a better place by frightening people. I am making the world a better place by harassing people who have the audacity to show up at the same bar as me. Needless to say, this is a twisted way. This is the same way as you mentioned Antifa. The anti-fascists are behaving in a very fascist manner. What it really means is fascism on my team is okay. My only moderate display. First of all, the description there is really horrifying for the fact that apparently nobody around Kat was willing to stand up for her or to say, hey, go buzz off, go yell at somebody else, take a long walk off a short pier. I don't quite get that. I know she was concerned. She didn't want the situation to get violent. Look, newsflash, people you don't agree with are free to go to eat and drink and enjoy themselves as much as anybody else. What we are seeing here is a form of fascism because it is an attitude of I am entitled to threaten violence or to enact violence. It was kind of fascinating to hear people saying the legal observers of that Antifa crowd thought it was okay to spray paint stuff on the driveway of Tucker Carlson. No, it's not. That's private property. I'd like to see those people get arrested for that. So we have this really fascinating argument, Greg. It started on college campuses, and now it is spilling off on campuses. The mentality of a bunch of people on the left. So let's face it, Greg, these are not the sharpest knives in the drawer. Their attitude is that speech that they disagree with or that offends them is a form of violence. And Greg, they also believe that their violence is a form of speech.
That's exactly right. And the way that it's being responded to, not just in the media, but by law enforcement. A guy we both know here in town, you know much better than I do, Larry O'Connor, a radio host, he interviewed the chief of police from D.C. and asked him all about the Tucker Carlson Antifa situation and asked if any arrests were made or if anybody had been held over for questioning when the police got to Tucker Carlson's house. And the police chief said, no, it was breaking up when we got there, so we just let everybody go. You think if that had happened at Chris Matthews' house, that everybody just would have been allowed to disperse after spray paint vandalism, damaging the front door, forcing the wife to go into hiding? Think so?
Yeah, unlikely. I
mean, I don't think he actually lives in D.C., but
yeah, he's out in the suburbs.
He is, but so the concept applies. And I'm still going back to your analogy. I'm trying to remember Michael Barone smiling on TV. He's a perfectly nice guy, but he's pretty serious when he's dissecting elections and turnout and stuff. So I'm trying to figure out what smirk they're trying to wipe off his face. But
very exactly, yeah. I'm going to wipe that studious, serious, visage off his face or something like that.
Yes, and you mentioned in passing the death of Stan Lee, died yesterday at the age of 95. The captain of the Marvel Universe, you could say. Spider-Man, Hulk, Ant-Man, so many others that you know much better than I do. I'm not much of a comic book guy. I know you are, and you've taken in most of the movies, if not all of them, in recent years, where all these characters kind of got their own and then brought back together for these conglomeration movies, all the great Marvel characters. So explain for those who are really impacted by the work what the passing of Stan Lee means.
I'd like to think that I was blessed or I was able to really enjoy collecting comics, particularly Marvel comics, back in my teen years. I know you didn't do this as much, Greg, and because of that, you probably had things like girlfriends and
no,
social life
really.
And things like that. If you're really into the comic books and the comic book geek world, you in the last couple of days, in the coming days, you may hear a bit of an argument about there's dispute about how much Stan Lee deserves credit for these various immortalized characters, Spider-Man, the Hulk, the Fantastic Four. How much also goes to artists like Steve Ditko. So there's always been a slight aura of controversy over whether Stan Lee got a little bit more credit than he deserved for some of this. But what's indisputable, Stan Lee, not only the creation, he was a driving force behind Marvel Comics, which absolutely changed the perception of comics, God, on so many different levels. I mean, I could talk about this for hours. The very short, simple way to put it is when Marvel Comics really got started and rolling in the 1960s. DC had well-known figures like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and they're almost like the Greek gods or characters out of mythology, larger than life. And that particularly with characters like Bruce Banner and Peter Parker, the family dynamics of the Fantastic Four, Stan Lee made them very human. He made them characters who the readers, who by this point were mostly kids and teenage boys, could relate to. Some of us kept reading them much beyond our teenage years, but there was kind of this sense of there'd always been this perception of it being juvenile and kind of silly and kind of lighthearted. And gradually over the years, comics became able to tackle not just, mature themes, but I think enjoyable at all ages. Marvel movies that we've seen the last couple of years, I'm comfortable taking. My boy is now currently, third grade and sixth grade and up to, I enjoy them. I haven't tried taking my parents to them, but I think, they're all well-made stories with great, dynamics and visuals and excitement, but also there's something very human at the heart of all of it. And I think that's what will really be remembered as Stan Lee's legacy. The other thing which I just kind of imagine is, Greg, you and I try to bring enthusiasm to what we do on this podcast. if we brought 1/100th of the enthusiasm to this podcast to what Stan Lee brought to like touting the most mundane issue of Spider-Man 184. Whatever Stan Lee was talking about was the most greatest and most enthusiastic thing ever. And, I remember somebody once said about Tiger Woods, it's not just that he plays golf better than anybody else in the world. He plays golf better than anybody else does anything else at that. I think Stan Lee loved comics and loved what he did and loved the industry and loved the joy of storytelling and the joy of these unforgettable, visuals and the merging of word and picture like that. Man, he loved it the way, most of us love our families. And so God bless him for that. Talking about just a role model for doing what you love and loving what you do to his dying breath. So God bless him. May he rest in peace. His family is the very definition of a life well lived.
You'd see entertainment clips from time to time of him with the fans. He loved every minute of that, too. And, of course, it was a huge thrill for the fans to meet him. So, Jim, good to have you back. We'll do it again tomorrow. Talk to you then.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And don't forget to visit our great sponsors over at Casper Mattresses. Right now, get $50 off towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/lunch and using the promo code LUNCH at checkout. And tune in again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.